Good morning, everyone. My name is Cragen Mosteller. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Florida Association of Counties for External Affairs, and we're going to get started right at 10. I have a couple of housekeeping items I want to let everyone be aware of, and then we'll get going. So the first thing is we only have 30 minutes for our call this morning. Our main presenter, Jeff, is going to have to get to the Capitol to do what his main job is, so we're going to have to let him run off and do that. The second thing I wanted to let you know is that we're going to do questions through the chat. So if you have any questions, if you'll just put them in the chat, and when Jeff is done, I'll moderate those. And if we don't get to your question today, then I'll follow up with you this afternoon. And then finally, this conference call information was spread far and wide. And so there are press on the call. We really appreciate you guys attending and hearing this presentation. So with that, I want to introduce Mayor Lincoln. She's from Monroe County, and most importantly, the president of our association. Mayor Lincoln.
Thank you, Cragen. Hello and good morning. It's Monday. It is the first day of June, and this is a day we were all expecting. We are now at the point where the governor has released what he would like to see for a property tax bill, and we're not surprised. And I'm going to say the majority of us on this call, if not all of us, want to always be fiscally responsible, and we all would like to cut taxes any way we possibly can. However, we need to do it in a way that is responsible and that is not cutting the services of the people who need the services and isn't handcuffing government from doing what it's supposed to do at the local and county level. So I appreciate everyone who is on this call, and I believe there's almost 200 participants so far signed in. Thank you. Y'all aren't here to hear me. You're here to hear Jeff, and I want to thank our staff. I know you all were on the phones with all of us all weekend long. Greatly appreciate that. And with that, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Lincoln, and good morning. Jeff Scala with the Public Policy team. I'm going to just do a quick overview of what we're going to discuss here on the call today, first of which are summaries of the two bills. We have both a joint resolution, SB 2F, and we have a general bill, SB 4F. There are different voting thresholds for each of those bills. The constitutional amendment does need 3/5 of the membership of both bodies of each chambers. So those voting thresholds are 24 votes off the floor in the Senate and 72 votes in the affirmative. If there is a member or senator not present, then they are as good as a no vote on the legislation. We're going to go through those bills and the fiscal analysis that we prepared for you all. Again, this is a short time frame, and we're giving those estimates on the county by county impacts of both the homestead exemptions provided in the bills and the non-homestead assessment limitations that are changed to give you a baseline. These are going to be conservative estimates. We're going to talk about the calendar here today. There's a lot going on. We just saw the First Amendment get filed onto the Senate bill, and we still don't have House bills. So there's a lot more to happen and changes to come. We're going to talk about a little bit what we've been doing over the last 5 days, and of course, the 6 or so months and the lead up to this special session. And we're going to talk about our action plan here today. So let's get at it. Senate Bill 2F and 4F. So, of course, these bills include new homestead exemptions. For year one, it will be a $150,000 homestead exemption. And in year two, it will be a $250,000 exemption. And it's applicable to all levies, including school districts. That's something that was not included in any of the House proposals during session. It really hadn't been a part of the conversation until last week when the governor, 4 or 5 days ago, released his plan to exempt school taxes as well on these homestead exemptions. There are no other exemptions provided in this. I know there's some messaging out there that it'll go up to 500,000. But it does not do that in the actual text of the constitutional amendment. The legislature is then directed to phase in a schedule to potentially direct for a uniform process for local governments to fully eliminate homestead property tax. The assessment caps. So again, there already is a 10% cap in law on the assessment limitations for non-homestead. Again, non-homestead isn't just small business. It's anything that isn't homestead. So it's your renters, it's your commercial property, it's businesses, both large and small. And it moves it from a 10% cap each year to a 5% cap. Versus the 3% cap that homestead properties already enjoy in the Constitution. There is some language in there on the 5-year residency requirement. So new arrivals in Florida will not get this initial 150 to 250 schedule. They will have the $50,000 exemption that is in current law. There, of course, is the automatic inflation growth adjustment. This was something that got passed in 2024. So every time the Constitution is amended, there's an escalator effect here. And that means the $250,000 exemption will go up on its own each year. And that's a permanent tax base erosion, and counties will never recover the ground given up each year on that adjustment. And that gap will compound over time, further changing the difference between just values or market values and what is taxable. The general bill does have a new calculation of the maximum rate. So while we're dealing with changes to the tax base, there is some language in here impacting the tax rates. So it's going to tie it back to the rollback rate, and increase the voting threshold for a maximum millage. Then there's the trust fund. The trust fund language is vague. It really doesn't say much. It is only provided in the schedule language for the constitutional amendment. We don't know where the money comes from, how much will be included in that trust fund, who qualifies or is prioritized, or how long it'll last. It really just says that it'll happen. And it's quite the admission that local revenues will not be able to provide the core essential services if the state needs to create a trust fund. Lastly here, I'm going to talk about the constitutional category lock. These are the 6 categories, which include public safety, education, financing and refinancing of infrastructure and natural resources. There is some bond language in there, and there is direction for payments to the Florida retirement system, your pension payments. Those are the only 6 categories that could be used by ad valorem revenues for in your local budgets. That means that whatever's not included has been left out. That includes your constitutional officers. That includes any health and safety mandates like Medicaid, cost share payments, DJJ, veteran services, and many, many more. I know everyone has a list of the things that will not be able to be paid because they're not on the constitutional restricted list, this lock provided in the constitutional amendment. So this whole proposal takes those local decisions out of your hands. Like I said, we have provided county by county impacts for the exemption changes and the assessment limitations. On the screen is a heat map showing the percentage of the total county levy that in our initial estimates, including that dollar figure on the screen, $6.3 billion for year 2 or full implementation of the constitutional amendment. Your suburban counties, your rural counties are going to have a higher share, while your larger counties that have higher values of property are going to have a higher dollar value threshold. So let's talk calendar. Like I said, we're seeing amendments come out, and in the last 10 minutes, there might have been more. But right now, what is true is that at 1 o'clock, the Senate will gavel in. And at 1:30, the House will gavel in. The House is going to be on a 2-hour notice. Right now, they do not have a single bill filed, but they have a 2-hour notice requirement. So at 1:30, when they gavel in and the speaker provides some opening comments, we may see what is to come at the 3:45 meeting of House State Affairs. Prior to that, the Senate will meet at 3 o'clock. We do know SB 2F and SB 4F are out here. So we will be there in both committees representing all 67 counties in those meetings as they move quickly towards tomorrow. Tomorrow will be floor sessions. So there is second reading and third reading, and it would be expected to take 2 days in the House and Senate. If they have competing proposals, we just don't know exactly what's going to happen as far as the proposals. But this is a general timeline of what's to come over the next 48 hours. So again, over the last 5 days, and of course over the last year, FAC has been engaged with the legislature. We put together that FAC property tax report way back for the House Select Committee, which feels like an eternity ago. In response to the governor's announcement even a year ago about eliminating homestead taxes. You can find everything at our facpolicy.com. Our policy action center, those QR codes. We've put together bill summaries. There are some infographics that explain just the what these bills do, the mechanics of the bills. There's those interactive state maps, but the most important thing is sharing your story. And we've been seeing those op-eds pop up all over the place. It is so important for you to tell your local story. We did send a letter to legislators with some more direct ask on these bills and urging them to vote no. We've been talking to House members. We've been talking to senators. We've been talking to everyone, stalking them in the hallways. When everyone was there on Friday for the budget, we were there to make sure we hounded everybody regarding the property tax proposals. All right. Take a deep breath here. All right. Today, the action plan. It's important. If you haven't done so already, do it again. Do it 10 more times. If you're not able to show up here today, come up. Well, of course, we want you here today in Tallahassee, but talk to your House members, talk to your senators, and tell the what's left story. If this passes, what does it look like? It's really important that you explain how property tax dollar is the most local dollar there is. It's set in public by officials your neighbors elected for services they can see. And of course, they're shrinking the base, and if they drain out our flexibility on the whole budget by restricting what we can spend those dollars on. We know this is a tax shift. They're framing it as a tax cut, but our small businesses, all businesses, they're going to feel the pain. Renters, they're not going to get an exemption. This proposal makes Florida more unaffordable. But of course, what we don't know is the trust fund and the process that is going to be unfold over the next 6 months. It's vague. It's confusing. We don't know how it's going to work. This isn't a full plan. And in that magic fund, of course, legislators will be forced to pick winners and losers amid thousands of funding requests amongst the 67 counties. Each year, it will turn into a food fight of which county do we prioritize? Are we going to focus on public safety? Are we going to focus on fiscally constrained? We just don't know. Are they going to turn into fights about deputies getting funded for additional deputies on the street? Or are we going to focus on paving the roads in our communities? So again, I know I went through that very quickly here this morning on our time constraint and wanted to be able to provide a high-level overview. But again, we urge you to contact your delegation and your legislators here today. We will be engaging them throughout this process as we always have done. Again, you can find everything at factpolicy.com. And then there is Keep Florida Thriving, which is our property tax forward website that has additional messaging, additional data for you all to share and advocate for your communities.
Thanks, Jeff, so much. I really appreciated that. And as you can imagine, the chat has a lot of questions. So I've pulled a couple that I wanted you to focus on this morning. So the first, it says the language in the bill in 2F includes exempt assessments for special benefits. Is there clarification on what that means? Our county has many municipal services taxing units, and we would like to understand if the bill impacts these as well.
The question being on exemptions on MSTUs, it affects every single taxing authority. So it's the first up to the first $250,000 exemption amount.
Thank you. And then, so we have another question. Do we think the constitutional officers will be budgeting directly with the state?
We don't know. I'm going to be relying on that answer a lot today. We really don't know. They're not one of the 6 allowable expenses. So you would have to find non ad valorem dollars out there if that comes from other taxes, other revenues that aren't obligated to be spent elsewhere. Many of your funds are restricted. So right now, it's an open live question.
What about the impact on CRAs? Is that an allowable expense?
No.
Quick answer. All right. So, since counties are responsible for correction, animal control, and courthouse security, does this mean the sheriff be lumped in with other constitutional officers?
The public safety question, it does mention public safety, but it'll have to be implemented. As far as we can tell right now, there will need to be additional information at a later time to really hammer out what can and cannot be spent with those public safety dollars. What is public safety was an open question throughout the House process, and it continues to be a question.
Thanks, Jeff. Just a reminder, if you have questions, to go ahead and put them in the chat. Here's but we still have plenty. So some counties have been publishing information on the reduction of funds for services such as libraries, but my county has a library millage. We understand no ad valorem revenue can be spent on libraries. Are there any programs outside the 6 categories listed? Are there any other readings of these restrictions?
I would have to defer to county attorneys in interpreting that. Again, there are only 6 categories, and I'm aware that there are many MSTUs that aren't one of those 6 categories. We think we'd have to have further information to understand how that will work.
Can you clarify if school districts are constitutionally exempt?
Correct. So on the first 250,000, on the first $250,000, their revenues would be impacted. So, in absent any other change, the school districts will be impacted and their budgets would be impacted.
Is there a definition of, quote, core public needs?
No. Only those 6 categories that will be enshrined and locked in the Constitution.
Just following up on the CRA question, does that mean that current active CRAs might be ended by this proposal?
It remains to be seen how that would play out.
Are there any restrictions on local replacement revenues, service taxes? Hold on. For the shortfalls in this bill?
There is no revenue replacement in the bill. The only mechanism for revenue replacement is this magic trust fund that is not funded. They have not earmarked state dollars for it, but it would be the only way to offset. And of course, it is an omission that there would not be enough funding for those core services.
And the core services, that's listed in the joint resolution or in the bill?
That is in the constitutional amendment, and that is part of the problem. Locking that language in would require another constitutional amendment. So of course, ad valorem is the most flexible, and it is the most local funding source that you all have for your budgets. And enshrining that in the Constitution and restricting those uses creates a structural problem here.
Are millages tied to voter approved referendums affected? So if it was voter approved millage, it would be impacted, right?
Yeah, there is no distinction.
Yeah. Would a mosquito control levy be considered public safety?
That's a great question. If it's not in the language, it might not be covered.
Is there an implementing bill?
In the traditional sense, no. The general bill is much more focused on the ballot and changes to the ballot process. It is not an implementing bill. It is just a general bill. So no, there is not an implementing bill to SB 2F.
Is there any indication if reserves that were collected via ad valorem revenue could be utilized for expenditures if this bill is passed, or if reserves would be subject to the identified allowable categories? It's a good question.
It's a good question. Sounding like a broken record. We just don't know.
Um, since the maximum millage would be the rollback rate, does this mean counties can roll forward in year one with a higher millage rate to make up the shortfall of a smaller taxable value?
Uh, the way I understand the rollback rate to work is that it would be the amount of levy to generate the same amount of levy. So yes, the rollback rate would work in reverse. It would just have a new voting threshold.
We are interpreting public safety to follow the uniform chart of accounts for local governments. This means that court funding is not part of public safety, as it is a separate category and was formerly general government. Is this your interpretation that court services would not be part of the public safety or the six allowable categories?
We certainly looked at that over the weekend, and we pulled up that chart of accounts. It's a great way because it's standardized across the state in our reporting. To the question, I think the question has the right premise here that it would not be included. But again, we need more specificity to answer the question, and the constitutional language does not provide that.
Thank you, Jeff. Are they guaranteeing to fund this trust fund? And what if the state has a budget deficit? Will the fund not be funded?
Well, if you are an avid watcher of the 5-year financial outlook that Amy Baker does provide the legislature, you would know that they are projecting deficits over the next few years. And again, there is no single revenue source identified in state dollars.
Can you discuss again what activity is happening today in the House? Potential amendments, votes required, other discussions?
There's been a lot of speculation, but not much public talk. On Friday, after they passed their budgets, neither the House Speaker or the Senate President took a media avail. So there's not been an opportunity to hear their public comments on this. The House could do many things. It would be speculation to say what they could and could not do. So they could take up the same bills or very close or similar versions. They could take up bills that they moved during the regular session. Any of those options and more are on the table.
So thanks, Jeff. How will county city debt be dealt with?
There is some language in the constitutional amendment that provides how you could still use ad valorem dollars on debt obligations. I have seen a letter from the Florida Government Finance Officer Association that speaks to that question, and I think that would be the best to review that letter on an interpretation for how to move forward right now on the debt question.
I think you mentioned this, but what about renters? Assuming costs would be passed along by landlords, is there an affordable housing hit here?
Certainly, just the simple mechanics of how a tax base erosion from homestead to non-homestead works. That's how that is certainly an impact that rents, could go up as landlords pass through the additional tax burden, that's placed on non-homestead to renters.
Thank you, Jeff. And then the automatic exemption CPI inflation that's capped at 3% each year. Does that stay in place, or can it be higher for exemption increases?
All right, so I want to make sure I got this question right. So there's the 3% or less each year for homestead that you cannot go up over 3%. But then this inflation adjuster is again, it is of CPI. So it's an escalator of the exemption. So it will keep trickling up. So of the 250, if it is a few percent, it will go up several thousand. And then continue to escalate year after year.
Is there clarification on if animal services and corrections cannot be reduced even if they don't fall under the sheriff?
Again, animal services, animal control is not mentioned, but I want to, you said a word that just kind of pinged something for me, and I wanted to make sure it's clear because the House bills talked a lot about freezing in time spending levels for public safety. Nothing in the Senate bills does that. It does not require you to spend the same amount in the next year. So again, while they're an allowable use, whatever revenue is left to provide those six uses, but nothing spells out that you would have to. So there isn't a protection, and of course, over time with the reduction of the base, it just calls into question our ability to pay for those essential services, and not just at a flat level, but even with growth over time, and as the needs change in the community.
Thank you, Jeff. That's actually all of our questions. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But there are a lot of people on the call. So if you have additional questions, I'm going to give you my cell phone number so that you people can call me and I'll get the answer from Jeff if I don't know it myself. But it's 850-294-9307. 850-294-9307. As things change, we'll continue to send out emails and alerts updating you on the latest information. And we thank you all very much for joining us today. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye, everybody.
See you over there.